Hello everybody, welcome back to another episode of Casual Criminalist. As always, I'm your host Simon. I'm here one of my writers, in this case Matt. Thank you Matt, for it to be a script. Religion over love. The American honor killings. Oh good. Didn't I just do a video about an honor killing in the UK? I mean like a couple of months ago. Why do people do this? Why do we have to be like, why are humans so stupid? Anyway, let's jump in. The format of the show, I've never read this before. That's how this show works. If you're new, welcome. Subscribe. Make sure you give a review to the show. Or a comment if you're watching on YouTube. Hello. Let's talk about tradition. Every culture in the world has its own customs and ways of doing things. It dictates how they go about life, who they choose to marry, how they raise their children, and how they celebrate important events. In the so-called Western countries, these customs overlap, so it's easy for us to understand why a person acts a certain way. The problem comes when two vastly different cultures meet up with each other, like when immigrants move to a new country whose customs and beliefs clash with their own. Ideally, they'd learn to adapt to their new surroundings while doing their best to keep on practicing their customs and beliefs, watching on with pride as their children flourish in a new country. Yeah, ideally. I think that's great. Like integration, like immigration and stuff. And then I think it's important to like integrate people into you know, the culture and stuff. The problem is like when it's really diametrically opposed or whatever, it's like, you got to be careful. Like if I went to live in, I don't know, Iran or something. Wait, where do they have Sharia law? Like one of those places where they'll like chop your hands off if you steal something. It's like, amount of stealing I'm going to do? None. Because I'm like, well, here, they'll chop your hands off. And it's like, oh, if you're an adulterer, they'll stone you to death. So no adultery. You just be like, okay, better adapt to that because that's how they do things here. And I live here. I mean, I don't live in Iran. Just to make that absolutely clear. And then also, why? And then also, if you come from like Iran and you go to live somewhere else, you can't like chop someone's hands off because they steal something for you. It's not how it works. You go to prison. Hello, everybody. Just before we continue with today's episode, let me thank our fantastic sponsor, Sheath Underwear. Look, if you're like me, you have those days, you have that life where you're like, boxer shorts, just a bit too loose. Everything's moving around a bit too much. Briefs, it's like, whoop, why so tight? Why so tight? Why isn't there something perfect? Why isn't there something in the middle? Well, where science fails, Sheath step up. These are the perfect underwear. They're just the right balance between boxers and briefs. Sort of boxer briefs, if you will. I guess they already exist. But Sheath's unique thing is that they have different pockets for your different man parts. And at first you might be like, well, that's a bit weird, Simon. Why would I need that? Just buy one pair of Sheath, using my link below, of course. And then the next thing you know, your cupboard will just be filled with Sheath and you will throw away all of your other underwear because that's the journey that you will go on with Sheath. They're stretchy, they've got moisture wicking technology, they keep everything cool and in place. They've even got new materials like bamboo and mesh for extra cooling comfort this summer. Plus, ladies, brand new bamboo line for you as well. So head over to sheathunderwear.com and use the promo code Criminalist to get 20% off your order. That's sheathunderwear.com, promo code Criminalist for 20% off. And a huge thank you to Sheath for sponsoring today's video. And now back to it. Ideally, their new home country would be welcoming and tolerant of their differences, accommodate them wherever possible, and provide them with the support they need to settle into life in their new country. But we don't live in an ideal world, and in some instances, the immigrants grow to hate their new countries, seeing them as prime examples of everything that's wrong in the world. In other cases, the parents watch on as their children abandon the customs and beliefs of their old countries and start to live in sin. In some of these cases, the parents are willing to go to extreme lengths to ensure that their children go back to living a good and pure life, even if their methods are considered to be illegal in the country they now call home. We are, of course, talking about honor killings. Yeah, this I think is what basically happened in the UK case. Like, there was a daughter of a couple of immigrants, and she was like living a Western life, having a good ass time, and then they're like, "You've brought shame on our family," or some bull like that. It's fucking stupid. Just stop it. Just stop it. What did you expect? You like immigrated to a new country, you had a kid, and you brought them up in that country. Of course they're gonna, adopt those traditions and such things. I have been thinking of writing about this topic for quite a while. I had it on my list for a very long time, and I was just working up to actually getting to it. But then George came out with this incredible script covering the honor killing of Shafilia Ahmed over in the UK, and it gave me the incentive I needed to finally tackle this one. That's exactly what I'm talking about. That's the name I had in my mind, but I wasn't 100% sure, so I didn't want to say it. It's a recent episode. Now, George made sure to bring it up in his script before, and I must say, it bears repeating here. This script is not a condemnation of the religion of Islam or the Arabic people. In fact, I've been told that one of the 5 pillars of Islam, aka the donation of alms, is the very definition of love thy neighbor and being a good Samaritan, which shouldn't come as a surprise since the Christians, the Jews, and the Muslims all believe in the same God. Yeah, I mean, this is, I feel like, okay, fine, put the disclaimer in there. But people who do honor killings, it's like saying, oh, yeah, and the KKK, super representative of Christianity. No, it's a tiny fucked up segment that shouldn't exist. And because it's like religious extremism. Just fucking stop. It's nonsense. We shouldn't have to live with this in our lives. And I shouldn't have to live with that drilling sound. Can you hear that? I was like, there's been non-stop renovations in my office and it's driving me potty. And I really thought that they weren't doing it today. And it just started up literally 30 seconds after I started recording. I don't know if you can hear it, but it's giving me a headache. But every culture and religion has its bad apples who take their religion to the extreme. With that said, I've got not 1, but 2 stories to tell you today. For simplicity's sake, we'll be going in chronological order, with our first story taking us all the way back to 1989, and the more recent and arguably more well-known of the two in 2007. So, as the darkness swallows us once again, let's get into the stories of a horrid, hypocritical couple and a selfish and vile father who ended the lives of those they should have loved more than anything in the world, their daughters. This is the heartbreaking story of Tina Issa. This is the gut-wrenching story of Amina and Yaser Said. Part 1. Dishonor from happiness. Let's start this first story by getting to know Tina a little better. Oh no. I mean, yes, but you're going to humanize her, and then I'm going to feel even more bad about honor killings, pieces of shit. Palestina Zain Issa, better known to all as Tina, was born on the 3rd of December 1972 in Mato Grosso, Brazil, the youngest of 7 children. For the first 14 years of her life, her family moved around quite a lot between Brazil, Puerto Rico, Palestine, which she was named after, the West Bank, and the United States, before permanently settling in an apartment complex in the southern portion of the city of St. Louis in 1986. By then, the 14-year-old Tina was already fluent in Arabic, Portuguese, and Spanish, thanks to her parents and her time living in Puerto Rico. I can only imagine how difficult it was to constantly move from place to place, but Tina did her best, and she wanted so much to make friends in her new home that she made a concentrated effort to learn English as quickly as possible. It's safe to say that Tina was a success story as well. She attended Roosevelt High School, where she excelled, becoming an honor student. She played soccer, which her father didn't like. She listened to hip-hop, rap, R&B, and rock, which her father didn't approve of. She wanted to become a pilot and study at Parks College of Engineering, Aviation, and Technology, which was part of St. Louis University, against her father's wishes. I don't know. God damn. And she went to and enjoyed her junior prom after her father said she wasn't allowed to. Are we starting to see a pattern here? Yeah, I'm seeing a pattern that her father's a kid. How about you support your kid who clearly has ambitions? For all intents and purposes, Tina simply wanted to be a normal teenager, a regular American teenager, something that she had every right to be. In other words, she simply wanted to be herself and simply wanted to be happy. And perhaps to her family, that was her biggest crime. Now, Ellen Harris is an author, and she wrote a book on this case titled Guarding the Secrets, Palestinian Terrorism and a Father's Murder of His Too American Daughter. Too American, like too much American, like rather than TWO. According to Harris, the problem was that Tina thought of herself as American or hyphenated American, not as Arab. Well, yeah, because you brought her up in many different places and then settled in America. That's what she's going to see herself as. So now let's talk about the utter wastes of skin known as Tina's parents. Zine al-Abdin Hassan Issa was born on June 3rd, 1931 in Mandatory Palestine, the British colony that controlled today's Israel and the Palestinian territories between 1920 and 1948. He was the third son of a farmer, lived a simple life, and was raised to be deeply religious in the Islamic faith, brought up on tradition, and led to believe in the concept of family honor beyond all else. That a woman should be subservient to her husband and her family, and that the daughters should do as their family, especially their fathers, ask. As was customary in the area, teenage Zain married his first cousin, a woman by the name of Foizia. From what I can find, they never had children of their own, but they never divorced, and they got separated. In 1950, Zain wanted to spread his wings, so he left Foizia and traveled with a group of others to South America. The first place he moved to was the southern region of Brazil, and while on a trip to Rondonópolis in the Brazilian state of Mato Grosso, he met someone special. That was Maria Matthias, a young native of Mato Grosso who was also 12 years his junior. Most notably, she was of German, Italian, and native Brazilian descent and was also a Roman Catholic. The two of them hit it off very quickly, and it didn't take long for them to start a relationship. Understandably, Maria's Catholic parents didn't approve of their daughter marrying a Muslim, but that didn't matter to the young couple. Zayn and Maria were married on February the 6th, 1963, and it wasn't until after they tied the knot that he revealed to his new wife that he was already married to his cousin back in Palestine. Surprise! I'm married to my first cousin! Did this bother? Well, it's hard to say, but instead of dropping him like a bad habit, she stayed by his side, and they remained married until the very end. After they were married, Zayn and Maria moved all over the place, first to the US and then back to Brazil. Their 6 daughters were born all over the world, but Tina was born in 1972 in Mato Grosso. It wasn't until 1980 that Zayn became a naturalized citizen in the US, and after moving his family to St. Louis in 1986, he opened up a rather successful grocery store on the corner of Shaw Boulevard and Clem Street. Zayn was very religious, very customary, very traditionalist and set in his ways, so much so that his behavior and strictness had rubbed off on Maria as well, who became just as bad. I mean, he's sort of super religious, but then he just marries someone outside of his religion. Is that, chill? I don't imagine he seems like the sort of dude who would not be okay with his daughter doing that, but he's totally chill with himself doing that. So we can just add being a hypocrite to being a kid. Things were difficult, especially since both Zayn and Maria only knew some English, and they were just as hard on their daughters, doing all they could to make sure that they stuck to their strict rules and traditions. Tina, now attending an American school and wanting to make friends, made a concentrated effort to fit in, despite her parents' constant supervision, and that's when things started going downhill. Tina wanted to fit in. She wanted to be accepted. She wanted friends. She wanted to be a typical teenager, and she wanted to be happy. Yet her efforts, at least in her parents' eyes, spit in the face of their traditions. They hated how she dressed. They hated the music she listened to. They hated her going out shopping and doing as she wished. And they hated that the friends she was spending time with weren't of the same culture or Islamic faith as Zayn. Her mother's a Roman Catholic. Fucking chill, you asshole. I hate this guy already. I hate hypocrisy. I really don't like hypocrisy. Just say what you mean. Just do as you say. Come on, it's not... I mean, I guess it's quite hard. But, just come on. And you're not different because you're a man. It's exactly the same, you cock. They heard Tina wanted to be a pilot and vehemently opposed it, believing that she was meant to be married off so that she could take care of her husband and family. I don't understand. They didn't even want her going to her own junior prom, seeing it as both indecent and unnecessary. And when she snuck out to attend, they sent someone to drag her back home, humiliating her in front of everyone. So yeah, safe to say that the relationship between Tina and her parents was strained by this point. Tina wanted the freedom to be a teenager in America. Zayn and Maria wanted her under their thumb, doing what they wanted her to do, doing what Zayn's culture and religion demanded that she do. They seemed to fail to realize that they weren't in Palestine or Brazil anymore. They were in America, and it was only natural that she became a product of the environment she was in. She was Americanized, and she was happy, healthy, and ready to spread her wings and live her life. But her parents did what they could to force her back onto the right path. Hell, they even started turning some of her older sisters against her, telling them how much the rebellious Tina was an embarrassment to the family, that she wasn't following the traditions that they had been made to follow all their lives before she was born. Not all of them were against her, though, and some of her siblings and relatives, namely her older sister Sarah Salem, even sought out help from the authorities. They wanted Tina to be put in foster care for her own protection, as they feared what Zayn might do to Tina if things continued as they were. Dude, if you're thinking about sending your own sibling away to foster care when there are 2 parents in the picture, it's is bad at home. That's crazy. She's in real danger. But then Tina got herself a boyfriend. This was 20-year-old Cliff Walker, the most American-named dude ever, and he'd been dating Tina since January 1989. The two of them loved each other, and they had a beautiful relationship. And that was the problem. You see, young Muslims don't date, at least not like we do. They date with the intention of marrying that person, and it's only in recent years that young Muslims have been allowed to choose their own spouses. For centuries now, all of their marriages were arranged because, apart from their family members, men and women of marriageable age aren't allowed to talk or touch persons of the opposite sex, making it near impossible to meet someone they'd like to marry. In some communities, couples are not allowed to hold hands or kiss, and premarital sex is forbidden. If they do socialize together, it's during supervised events and get-togethers, and the couple has to be accompanied by a chaperone at all times. And that's In lenient communities and some Muslim communities, an unmarried girl can be completely rejected by her family for having a sexual relationship with a boy. In other, more conservative communities where Islamic or Sharia law is followed to the letter, the girl can be imprisoned or lashed 100 times. Sharia law is up. I know people are like, Simon, you've got to respect other cultures. Yeah, but how about no corporal punishment? And in the more religiously extreme communities, let's just say that in a world where a woman can be doused with acid for attending school, the punishment for fornication is harsh. So when Tina introduced her family to Cliff, Zayn was enraged. First of all, if it had been up to her parents, Tina would marry a Palestinian boy of Zayn's choosing and move to the West Bank village of Beitin. Can you imagine moving? Where was she in America? Or like moving from the US, where she's in a relationship with a dude called Cliff, to having to just move halfway around the world and live in Palestine with some dude that she doesn't know and just take care of their family. That's insane, Zayn. Don't you see how insane that is? Also, don't you see how insane it is that you did the exact opposite of this? The hypocrisy is real, my friends, yes. Remember, Maria, his second wife, was born and raised a Roman Catholic and still practiced her own faith. Pot, meat, kettle. And secondly, Cliff was an African American. Zayn hated all African Americans since he believed that Palestinians had been targeted, abused, and taken advantage of by African Americans in the US. So for his daughter to have fallen in love with one, that was to him the true betrayal. Throwing some racism there as well. Way! The Yaser household was like a house of cards, but every time Tina did something wrong, one of the cards would tip over. Every single perceived infraction, every single dishonor to the family name was a card being pushed over, falling one after the other. When her parents came to the conclusion that Tina was fornicating with her African-American non-Muslim boyfriend, the house of cards collapsed, and Zayn and Maria hit their breaking point. It's November the 6th, 1989, the middle of the fall semester, and Tina had just started her first day of work at a new part-time job at Wendy's. This too was seen as a slight to the family, since Tina didn't want to work in their grocery store. Why the would you? If this is the situation you're living in, it's like, oh yeah, you know who I'd really like to spend more time with? My hypocritical asshole parents. They wanted to keep her as close and as isolated as they could, and everything she did was in defiance of that. That night, Cliff waited for her to finish up her first shift, and he walked Tina to her home at the Dello Park Apartments. Tina was annoyed, knowing that once she stepped inside, she'd have to deal with more of her parents' nonsense. The two lovers said goodbye to one another, and then Tina made her way upstairs. She'd be dead before the stroke of midnight. Die, my daughter, die. That night, Tina's parents were already waiting for her when she arrived home from work. And what was the first thing Maria said to her daughter as she walked in the door? Where have you been, bitch? What the fuck? Oh, hi, Mum. Tina told them that she was at work, but that she'd left them a note saying she'd be home late. Perhaps it was because they were still enraged that Tina had the audacity to want to stand on her own 2 feet and wanted to make her own spending money instead of working at their store like they wanted. Perhaps they fully believed their own sick and pathetic delusion that she had been out doing something she shouldn't have. But either way, they were angry. They saw her as an embarrassment. She was constantly going against what they wanted and breaking the rules they set for her, and she needed to be punished. Things began to get heated, as they always did, and soon the argument turned to Tina's behavior and her relationship with Cliff. Then Zayn simply looked at Tina, his youngest daughter, and told her, "Here, listen, my dear daughter. Do you know that this is the last day? Tonight, you're going to die." Tina was understandably taken aback. I mean, this was her dad. This was the man who helped give her life. The man who was meant to always love and protect her no matter what, telling her that she was going to die that night. Sure, things had gotten rocky, and their relationship of late hadn't been the best, but there's no way that he was seriously going to kill her, right? But they had planned this. Zayn and Maria. To them, their daughter was too rebellious, too much of a disgrace, and she had brought too much dishonor. To their family, she had to die. While Maria continued to question Tina about what she'd really been doing that night, Tina stared at her parents in horror. She began to scream and back away when her father picked up a boning knife and walked towards her, demanding that she hold still. Tina begged her mother to stop him, to help her, but Maria just started lambasting her again, saying that she deserved what was about to happen. Together, Zayn and Maria grabbed Tina and forced her to the ground, all the while Maria, almost mockingly, continued to ask her youngest daughter if she was ready to be obedient to them now. "Are you going to listen? Are you going to listen?" Yes, I am. It was too late, though. Nothing Tina could have said or done would have stopped these two demons in human skin from committing this atrocious act, without any hesitation or trace of love or regret in their eyes. In his eyes, Zayn Issa brought the boning knife down again and again on his daughter's body. Tina continued to scream in fear and agony, but with each stab, her cries got weaker and weaker. She let out one last cry, one last screaming plea for her father to stop. But Zane refused to listen. He simply put his foot on her mouth to muffle her screams, looked into her eyes and sneered, "Die. Die quickly. Die quickly. Quiet, little one. Die, my daughter, die." And just like that, it was over. With one final stab, Tina Yaser left this world, all at the hands of her parents, two abhorrent monsters who were supposed to love her, to take care of her, but they were too blinded and obsessed with their own religious beliefs that they simply couldn't allow her to continue living, continue being her own person, continue to simply be happy. Zane and Maria were still covered in their daughter's blood when the police and the FBI burst into the apartment and arrested the couple for Tina's murder. Now you might be asking, well, what's the FBI doing there? Why were they so quick to respond? I was like, wait, who called the police? Wait, who called the FBI? And this is where the twist in the story comes. You see, Zane was a proud member of the Abu Nidal Organization, or ANO. Established in 1974, they were a now-defunct Palestinian militant group founded by Abu Nidal and was an offshoot of Fatah and the Palestine Liberation Organization. In short, they were terrorists. Sadly, they were also very busy terrorists, committing dozens of terrorist attacks in 20 countries over 2 decades, with their activities ranging from assassinations to hijackings and kidnappings. For almost 3 decades, they were responsible for killing or injuring about 1,650 people across the US, the UK, France, Israel, Palestine, the PLO, and various Arab and European countries. Thankfully, they're no longer active since the organization shut down following the death of Abu Nidal in 2002. But back in 1989, Zane was actively aiding in a plot to bomb the Israeli embassy in Washington, D.C., and the feds knew about it. So they had wiretapped the Yaser household months earlier, and the entirety of Tina's murder was captured on tape. That's why I'm like, who's reporting on this? How do we know? Because the parents surely would shut up. So I'm like, how do we know? And it's because it was all being monitored. Unfortunately, by the time the FBI had actually gotten around to listening to the recordings, it was far too late to save Tina. But they could ensure that her parents were brought to justice. Justice for Tina. Tina Yaser was laid to rest at Sacred Heart Cemetery in Florissant, Missouri. From all reports, it's believed that she was buried in a wedding gown, as was tradition for unmarried girls and women in Brazil. When it came to the funeral and burial, Tina's family was very adamant that it be a private affair, keeping information of it very quiet in order to ensure that only people from the family, the local Palestinian community, and people from Beitin attended the ceremony. Her obituary wasn't even put in the local papers. A real kick in the teeth. Cliff was barred from attending. All of the insistence of the family. I think all of us can agree when we collectively say these people. Yes, as I said, hypocritical heads. They can right off. Oh, if the audio sounds different, audio listeners, it's because I'm at home. Everyone on YouTube has probably seen this. The drilling sounds were too much. And so I drove home, and I am doing this from my home studio. So welcome to my home studio. I hope everything is all right. The trial began in 1991, almost 2 years after Tina's death. The entire time, Zane and Maria's lawyers were adamant that their clients were innocent. Bro, the FBI literally have a recording of you saying, "Die, die quickly, die. Quiet, little one, die, my daughter, die."
I'm innocent, Your Honor.
What the are you doing? Strap him in the chair and set it off. Let's go. And that everything that happened was an act of self-defense. I repeat, die, my daughter, die. What? No. According to Zane, Tina had come home and demanded $5,000 from them. When they couldn't give it to her, she simply grabbed a boning knife nearby and came at them both. Zane got the knife away from her and retaliated, resulting in her death, while also stating that Maria had no part in any of the carnage. Yeah, sure, Zane, and I am Selena Gomez. All of that was, of course, total hogwash. The entire confrontation was caught on tape. The FBI had heard the whole thing, and their geese were royally cooked. Even if... dude... they've got you on tape. Surely at this point, you've got to plead guilty and hope that you can get life with the possibility of parole or life without parole instead of the death penalty. Surely that's what you've got to be hoping for at this point, because you are fucked. And even if there wasn't a tape of the incident, none of the evidence pointed to the scenario they implied, namely the lack of defensive wounds. Of course, the question came up as to why the FBI didn't intervene before things got bad. Well, I mean, they can be listening, but it doesn't mean they're close by. There's this thing called electronic communications. During the trial, it came out that the FBI was privy to a number of family arguments in the past, but that all they thought of Zane's past threats were nothing but hot air, which is why they didn't step in before things turned deadly. In a quote from a 1991 article from the New York Times, "Since the FBI has refused to discuss the tapes, only some of which were used at the trial, it's not clear whether the authorities could have intervened to prevent the killing." Well, I mean, they could have intervened, of course, but not in this. They just didn't get the chance. They didn't, I don't blame them for this. I think them not intervening is completely reasonable. The insanity of this man killing his daughter with the mum is like something that even the FBI would be like, whoa, did not see that coming. At the end of the trial, Zane and Maria were exposed for what they were: hateful, mean-spirited monsters who wanted to control their daughter and force her to live the life they wanted. And when they couldn't get her to conform, they killed her. Simple as that. And even when she was dead, they wanted to discredit and shame their daughter in any way they could, as long as it meant that the two of them could get off scot-free. Some people simply don't deserve the privilege of being called parents. Some people just don't deserve the privilege of sharing oxygen with the rest of us. They're just stealing that oxygen. On the 25th of October 1991, Zane and Maria Yaser were both convicted of first-degree murder. Yay! The sentence the jury recommended? Death! Yay! And so on December the 20th, the judge agreed. Yay! And sentenced both of Tina's parents to die. Yes! That's what happens when you kill your daughter because she has a boyfriend who you don't like and is adapting to the culture that you brought her up in. You douchebags. The verdict seemed to not sit well with a certain friend of the family, as after it was read out, a woman simply known as Mrs. Abraham made her thoughts very clear to the courtroom when she explained that this was the only proper way in which Zine and Maria could go about disciplining their daughter. What, by murdering them, Mrs. Abraham? You need to be on a list, Mrs. Abraham. The judge should be like, bang, bang of his gavel, and it's like, and now we begin the trial of that woman, bailiff. Take her into custody. She's done something. I don't know what it is, but she's done something. Tina had to be killed in order to restore the family's honor. To quote her, "I feel it's not right. We follow our religion. They'd be embarrassed in front of everybody in the country, like somebody when they'd go without their clothes outside." Hell, in response to the case, it's been reported that a number of Palestinian families moved back to Palestine for the simple reason that they didn't want their children to be as completely Americanized as Tina had been. I mean, you do what you gotta do, I suppose. The murderous married pair were then sent to death row and were housed in separate prisons in Missouri. Zine was sent to Potosi Correctional Center and Maria to the now abandoned Rennes prison. Zine's troubles were far from done, though, since he was indicted by the FBI in 1993 in connection with his terrorist activities within the Abu Nidal organization. Hell, there was even talk of Zine killing Tina for fear that she could expose his dark dealings with the group. In the end, though, with him already being on death row, the charges were dropped. Yeah, it's like, I mean, you got him. You got him. He's already going to be killed. Woo! Sadly, the state never had the opportunity to end this waste of skin. Zine Yaser passed away in prison on February the 17th, 1997 as a result of complication from diabetes. Oh, okay. Well, 1993, 1991, 6 years on death row. I mean, fine. Like, I really thought it was going to be because whatever state they were in, decided to abolish the death penalty. It's like, no, come on. Grandfather him in, for God's sake. Not a fun way to go, so I'll take it. Maria held on a little longer, especially after she got a little bit of a reprieve. Her death sentence was eventually commuted to life in prison with no possibility of parole, and behind bars is where she spent the rest of her days. Ah, I feel like we should have killed her. She survived until April 30th, 2014, and at the age of 70 died from natural causes. It's kind of a bummer, isn't it? She got like 14 years in prison when she should have just been like, needle in the arm, baby. I'm not the most well-versed in the Islamic faith, but I'm fairly sure they have their own version of hell. And if a thing actually exists, I can rest easy knowing that Zine and Maria Yaser will suffer Allah's wrath forevermore for what they did to their daughter, as one of the jurors put it, just because she wants to be an American teenager. Part 2. Farther from Hell. So now, with that heartbreaking story concluded, let's get started on the second, more recent case, and arguably the more famous of the two. Yaser Said was born on January the 27th, 1957 in Sinai in Egypt. While in Egypt, things were going well. His parents were very well off and very affluent in their hometown, and so Yaser and his two older brothers wanted for nothing. Things took a turn after his father and mother got divorced. Upon his father's remarriage, one thing became clear. It was up to Yaser and his brothers to make their own way in the world. Their father wouldn't support them any longer, and so they had to get jobs of their own. I mean, so far, so reasonable. It's like, guess what, kids? Yes, I might have money, but you've got to go make your own. Go. I think that's healthy and good. Over time, Yaser's older brothers made their way over to America looking for a fresh start. Soon enough, Yaser would follow in their footsteps, and in 1983, he received a student visa which would allow him to travel to the United States, after which he moved to Texas. He lived there for several years, but by the time 1987 rolled around, he had just turned 30 years old, and his visa was close to expiring. It was then that he found true love, or at least his meal ticket to staying in the country. It's like, oh, what a convenience. Your visa was expiring, and now you found someone who can extend your visa for you. Oh, this was 15 years? What? It's like, no, visa officer. I'd love to stay in the country because this is my girlfriend, Patricia. She's 15. Be like, hold on a second, sir. You've come to the wrong government office. You need to go to the prison. 15-year-old Patricia Tissy Owens, and if your skin just started crawling, there's a good reason for that. Remember that Yaser was 30 when they met. You want me to make it even worse? Well, how about the fact that Yaser's older brother had been in a relationship with her, but broke it off, only for Yaser to swoop in and ask her out, which she accepted. Or how about this? After only a week of dating, this man proposed to her, and she accepted. Can you say grooming? Can you say predator? Yes, I can. Grooming predator. Oh god, the video just got totally demonetized. Well, apparently things were pretty f***y at that time in Texas, because the marriage was actually allowed to take place. She's 15! When is this? 1987? That's the year I was born. What you doing, Texas? She's 15. He's 30. What? He's not even got a valid visa, or it's going to expire or whatever. What the f***'s going on? From what I can gather, as long as Tissy got the okay from her parents, then everything was perfectly fine, even if Tissy was only 15. I do remember there being some laws where it's like you can get married at 16 with your parents' permission, but it's like 15? That should just be straight illegal, my dude. I think it should be straight illegal till 18, and then the people can make their own big boy and big girl decisions. Even at 18, I'm like, if you're getting married at 18, I'm like, is your brain really your brain's not done cooking yet. Let it cook a little bit. I don't know what's worse, the fact that the law actually permitted that at the time, or the fact that Tissy's parents gave their consent despite having some reservations. Thankfully, it appears that law no longer exists, and you now must be 18 in order to legally get married, but I mean, good Lord, Texas. With regards to Tissy's family, none of them seemed to have any qualms about this pairing in the slightest. Tissy's mother was no more... Wait, didn't they just say they had reservations? Tissy's parents gave her consent despite having some reservations. None of them seemed to have any qualms about this pairing. Which one is it, Matt? Tissy's mother was no more than a year or two older than Yaser at the time. It's so fucking weird. And had also been married as a teenager. Ye fucking are, Texas. Good Lord, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, it seems. And Yaser, from what they could tell, was a fine and polite gentleman. But he's weird. He's 13. He's with a 15-year-old. She's half his age. And it's not like some, I don't think that's it. Is there any example of that? I'm like, it's not like he's 80 and she's 40. That's still weird. Not as weird as this. And also not as illegal, allegedly. Although apparently not in Texas. What the f***, Texas? It probably helped that Yaser lied and said he was very wealthy, owning a bunch of land over in Egypt, which of course he didn't. To quote Tissy's sister, Connie Mogio, he was really nice, but you couldn't understand a lot of what he was saying. He didn't speak very good English. Tissy's cousin, Cindy Cavado, believed that this was a very bad idea and knew that Tissy was making a big mistake, though she seemed not to care in the slightest. Quoting her, "I think it was just a way out of what she was living in. She grew up extremely poor. I think she had a fairy tale idea of marriage. I know she wasn't in love. It was ignorance and being naive." The two of them got married on February the 7th, 1987, and in a Christian church no less. Also, if it wasn't clear and obvious enough that this was a marriage for residency, after the ceremony, a number of women from Tissy's family who had been in attendance would later claim that they were approached by several men from Yaser's family and friends in the parking lot, all of them asking for their hands in marriage. You really can't make it up. Super weird. Speaking of family, though, as soon as the I-do's were exchanged, Yaser was determined to start a family of his own and insisted that they had to be raised in the Islamic faith. So by the time Tissy turned 18, she already had 3 children with Yaser to take care of. Wait, didn't we just say that it was just for a visa? But they're actually going through with it, full on? Having 3 kids before she's 18? Texas, what's going on? The first child was named Islam Said. He was born in 1988, and then there was Amina Said, born in 1989, and Sarah Said, born in 1990. All very close together. In order to provide for his family, Yaser made a living as a taxi driver. Reports vary, but from what I could gather, most of the local taxi companies had their issues with him, mostly due to his big mouth and his bad attitude, with his co-workers calling him crazy and unpredictable. If your co-workers describe you as literally crazy, it's like, oh yeah, no, he's crazy. That's really worrying. It's not like, oh, he's a bit weird, which is just like, oh, okay, people could be a bit weird, but crazy? It's like, he's crazy. We call him Crazy Yaser. You see, Yaser had an ego, a very big ego, and he believed that he should be living a high life like he did back in Egypt. Sadly for him, he wasn't exactly the most accomplished academically, which stifled any real opportunities of getting those higher-paying, high-flying jobs that would have enabled him to live the American dream. This only added to his bitterness and feelings of inferiority, especially in comparison to his much more successful brothers. They were flourishing, they were making a lot of money, and yet here he was working more and more insane hours all throughout the day and night just to keep his family afloat. And on top of being terribly narcissistic, Yaser was also unbelievably paranoid. He thought the people around him were always watching him, always judging him, always out to get him, that they all wanted him to fail and watch him fail. And so, what does an egotistical man with severe paranoia do to gain as much control of his life as he can muster? Well, he exerts as much control over the only thing he can, his family. Oh, what a big man. It's like bullying people who are smaller than you, like... What the... Well, to be more specific, he tried to take control over the lives of his wife and daughters. His son, Islam, was clearly his favorite, mostly because he was the only other man in the house. Thus, he clearly had more importance to him than any of those lowly women. Of course, because sons are better. They're the best. I don't understand how some people are. I just don't understand. I've got a boy and a girl. And it's like the idea that one's better than the other's just insane to me. I mean, one's older, so obviously like more skilled and could talk to you more. But it's like the idea that it's like, oh yeah, no, I love that one more because he's the boy. It's like, what the f*** is going on? Islam was showered with praise from his father, placed on a pedestal above his mother and sisters, and was allowed to act as their superior, even being allowed to call his mother by her first name and cuss her out if she tried to discipline him. Let me tell you something, if I ever called my mum by her first name at his age, let alone swore at her, I wouldn't be able to feel my cheek for about a month from how hard she would have slapped me. And yet this was allowed, and it just goes to show how Yaser demanded control over the women in his house. Yaser belittled his wife on a daily basis and abused her mentally and emotionally to no end. He forced her to conform to his culture, insisting that she should stop wearing makeup, give up pork, and fast with him on Muslim holidays. She also had to ask her husband's permission in order to go out or even talk to her friends after they were married, which was a far cry from life the way she was used to. What have you done? You gotta get divorced. Come on. It's the 1990s. You can do it. Yaser even went so far as to threaten... It's not her fault, obviously. This guy's a... But she needs to get out of there. This guy's crazy. They call him crazy for a reason. Connie Mogio recalled one occasion when she went to visit the family and left with a shocking surprise. I went over to see the kids. I was leaving, and he blocked me in. Yaser told me, I can hurt you right now, and nobody would ever know it. And don't ever go to his house and get his family. What? What? Crazy Yaser. Come 1997, Yaser officially became a US citizen. Ironically, this was also when Tissy left him for the first time. She'd had enough. She'd reached her limit, and so she gathered up the kids and left. Excellent decision. Sadly, it would only be temporary. Yaser refused to let her leave. He refused to be humiliated by a woman in such a way. After picking up the children from school one day, he proceeded to drive all the way to Virginia and said that if she didn't come home, he'd take them all to the Middle East and she'd never see them again. I don't think you can just do that. I don't think you can just go to the airport with your kids and be like, where are you going? Egypt? And it's like, yeah. We're going to need to hear from the mother of this one. You can't just be leaving the country with your kids like this. Come on now. Right? Wait, now I'm wondering because I'm from the UK and I live in Czech. I'm going to the airport with my kids in August. Next month. Wait, 2 months. If I go to the airport with my kids, are they going to be like, we need to make sure you got permission from the other party? Is that a thing? It feels like it should be a thing. Because people would this dude could kidnap the kids and take them to the Middle East. And then what are they going to do about it? It's going to be really hard to get those kids back. And so she returned to him, heartbroken and defeated. And of course, with this victory, it only solidified in his mind that he was better than her. He was still domineering. He was still controlling. And he still wasn't making any real money. What a loser. The family ended up moving to a new home in Covington, Texas, and Yaser took up a job at a local convenience store. I say new home, but it was pretty much an old shack on the property of one of Yaser's family members. It was so squalid and run down that his family had to use a bucket to go to the toilet. Bruh, it's the 1990s in America. People go to the... what the... You're not homeless, dude. It was after the family had returned to Yaser, with Amina and Sarah being 9 and 8 respectively, that dear old dad began having fun with them behind closed doors and touching them inappropriately. This was a twist I didn't expect. Which, according to Sharia law, means that if he was found guilty of molesting them, his community would be allowed to stone him to death or give him 100 lashes. Can't say I'm against this one. Nah, stone him to death. That sounds brilliant. Let's send him back to Egypt to be stoned to death. Let's fucking go. But when Tissy found out what he was up to, she left Yaser yet again and went to her cousin to file a report with the sheriff. Just deport him to Egypt. File a report with the Egyptian sheriff. Bury him in the sand so his head's sticking out and then throw rocks at his head until he's dead. Quoting, the girls were staying with their grandmother and were afraid to go to their father and told the grandmother that their father had put his oh my god, I do not want to... Oh my god. Okay, so he did horrible things to them, which I'm not going to read, but I feel unpleasant for having read. When the girls were interviewed, they confirmed all of what they had told their mother. Child Protective Services, CPS, got involved and Yaser Said was charged with sexual penetration of both girls and felony retaliation in December 17th, 1998, after he threatened to kill Tissy and take back the children. Did this go anywhere? Of course not, because consequences don't seem to exist for Yaser Said. Amina and Sarah recanted their allegations, claiming that they made it all up because they wanted to live with their grandmother and because they hated the school in Covington, resulted in the charges being dropped on January the 12th, 1999. Can you say bullshit? Bullshit! Bullshit. Clearly, the girls have been forced to take back what they said, not only by Yaser, but by Tissy too. The cycle continued, and with that, Yaser and Tissy got back together once again, with the family bouncing from home to home in Dallas, in the Dallas and Tarrant areas. Bro, what the fuck? Yaser continued to drive his taxi and continued to make little money, and the family managed to get by to disability checks that they received after Islam was diagnosed as being mentally disabled. And so, the years passed, and the physical, mental, and emotional abuse continued, though thankfully it seemed Yaser at least got the message since the sexual abuse stopped completely. Over the next few years, Tissy would leave with the kids more than once, only to return to Yaser after he threatened them with either assault, kidnapping, or death. Oh my god, is it possible I hate this dude more than the previous dude? I mean, let's not rank evil fucks, but like, god damn. Initially, Islam was angry at his father for how he treated his sisters, but as he grew older, Islam not only accepted it, but his behavior towards them and his mother became worse and worse, and he soon joined in their abuse. Soon enough, though, Amina and Sarah became teenagers and things only got worse. Building to tragedy. From what I could find, both Amina and Sarah were kind, they were bright, they were friendly, outgoing. According to their Aunt Connie, Amina was bubbly, happy, and very smart, a great girl, while Sarah was headstrong, but happy as well, energetic, and pretty. They were excelling in their studies and athletics, and Amina was already getting scholarships. They wanted to be independent and successful. They wanted to live their lives to the fullest. And that might have been their biggest crime, at least in the eyes of their father. They were becoming too independent, too westernized, and he hated every bit of it. Bro, you literally chose... This is the thing. You got to be careful. Like, I feel like in the last one I didn't really know their backgrounds, right? Because then you can be, you can be wrong by saying, oh, this person chose to move to America and have their kids there, and so it's their fault that they think it's weird that their kids are growing up in an American lifestyle. Maybe they were refugees. Maybe they were fleeing persecution. Maybe they really didn't want to move to America, but they had to. This dude was rich in Egypt. His dad was like some big high-flying dude. He had a good-ass life. He chose to move to America. No fucking two ways about it. Yaser's paranoia went into overdrive as his girls got older. It became an everyday occurrence for him to vigilantly monitor his wife and daughters nearly everywhere they went, videotaping them, making audio recordings of their conversations, you name it, he did it. Going to school, Yaser was close by. Heading to a friend's house, Yaser had a camera ready. All of it without their consent or knowledge, at least at first. It's even reported that Amina and Sarah were too scared to even take calls from their friends for fear that their father was listening in close by, saying that he gets in everywhere. He knows everything. You want to know the real crazy part of all of this? Soon enough, Sarah got a job at a local convenience store. We all remember our first job as teenagers, right? Yes, I indeed had a job at a convenience store. My first job was picking raspberries. I went to a field and you get paid like £3 or something for like a whole punnet of raspberries you'd picked. And it was me, a bunch of other teenagers, like, 14, 15-year-olds, and many, many immigrants just sweeping through this field. And these guys were obviously pros because they were whipping through those raspberry bushes. And me and the rest of the teenagers like,
oh, they're prickly.
More than likely it was some sort of convenience store or food service establishment. And what's the number one rule when dealing with customers? Always smile. Yeah, maybe in America, in Britain, we're just like, good morning. No need to smile, just be polite. Do your best to look happy and put a smile on your face when dealing with a customer. And what did Yaser do? Well, not only did he videotape her from the outside while she was on the clock, but got angry for the fact that she smiled at the customers, especially the male ones. Something that was literally part of her job, something that is simply courteous in everyday life, and he punished her for it because he's a fucking psycho who deserves to die. I mean, does he deserve to die yet? Well, I know where he's going, so let's just say yes! Or how about this? Every car has an airbag in the steering wheel. Okay, wonder where we're going with this. It's a basic feature, and one that saves lives every day. Well, what if I told you that Yaser, in his paranoia and incessant need to monitor his daughters, had replaced Amina's airbag with a listening device? The fucking psycho. Bro, what's going on? This makes no sense. Just, why would you need to put it where the airbag is? Just put it under the seat. Put it in the headlining. Just pop off a piece of trim and just hide it under there. Why'd you hide it in the airbag? It also didn't help that wherever he was staking out his daughters, Tissy was there, all the while not lifting a finger to stop him. And when she voiced her concerns, they were so nonchalant and blasé that she might as well not have said anything at all. She was so scared of him, so scared of what he could do, that she was as submissive to him as possible, having been browbeaten for years on end. He screamed at Tissy, he screamed at his daughters, and he continued to physically abuse them to the point where Sarah and Amina futilely had to attempt to hide the bruising on their arms and bodies when they went to school. Yeah, I don't blame the wife for this one. Like, in the previous one, she kind of seemed to be like, there wasn't a lot of pressure on her, she just seemed to also be a psycho. Whereas this dude, his wife is, abused as well. Amina and Sarah feared their father. No fucking shit. And it was clear for all to see. Amina herself even spelt it out in an email once to one of her teachers saying, he will, without any drama or doubt, kill us. Oh my god, that is a chilling ass sentence. It's very well constructed, with those commas and stuff for a young person, and without drama or doubt. Oh my god, that's chilling. And here's where we get into the reasons many to this day consider this to be an honor killing. Yaser Said wanted full control over his family, every single detail of their lives. Hell, the man even refused to go out and work unless his daughters were sleeping or being watched like a hawk by their brother. Part of controlling every aspect of their lives included, of course, who his girls were meant to marry. Unbeknownst to his daughters, Yaser had arranged for Amina to marry a much older man back in Egypt. He had even arranged for Amina and himself to fly over in order for her to meet her husband-to-be. But as soon as they arrived and Amina found out what was going on, she flat out refused in anger. This enraged Yaser. He had been counting on marrying Amina off. He had planned for it to go off without a hitch. Ellie was depending on it. You see, along with the marriage would have come the sizable dowry that her husband would have paid Yaser in order to have her hand in marriage. The vile, lazy bastard was basically selling his daughter in order to support himself for the foreseeable future, and with her refusal, all that money had gone up in flames. God, what a fucking colossal douchebag. From there, his paranoia worsened, and he dug even deeper to see if there was something going on that he didn't know about. And there was. Amina had a boyfriend. This was Joseph Marino, a boy that Amina had met during her taekwondo class. At first, they were simply friends, but soon enough it blossomed into something more, and the two of them began having a romantic relationship that even included having sex. Again, nothing wrong or out of the ordinary here for a regular American teenager, but it is absolutely forbidden in a Muslim household. As such, the two knew that they had to keep their relationship as secret as possible from her father. Worse still, Amina hated her father and wanted nothing to do with him, his culture, or his religion. To quote Amina from a statement she made to her boyfriend, "I don't believe any of it because I see how their women are treated. I have to walk behind the men. They beat up their wives." But Amina knew that it wouldn't be long before her father found out about Joseph, and she became more and more frantic. She didn't want her dad to hurt her or Joseph, and she knew his reaction would be severe. She did everything that she could, even trying to get rid of the family phone bill so that Yaser couldn't tell who she was talking to, but it was not enough. Yaser eventually found out, and he was furious. He believed that she had dishonored him and their whole family, and that she had cost him too much. It got so bad that after he took the time to move the family to a new house in Louisville, Texas, Yaser even threatened Amina with a gun on Christmas 2007. And with that, Amina and Sarah had had enough. They ran away to the local Kruger store where Tissy worked. Upon hearing that Yaser was threatening her daughters with a gun, saying he would kill them, her co-workers said she had to get out and that she had to leave him. Tissy agreed, and Amina texted Joseph asking if he would marry her, to which she agreed. After that, Amina, Sarah, and Tissy all fled with $9,000 that Tissy had taken from a stash that Yaser had hidden away. Good. They went to stay at the house of one of the girl's friends, only to flee once again on December the 27th, 2007, with the help of their aunt, Connie Mogio. From there, the girls went to stay with Joseph's family in Tulsa, Oklahoma. They wanted it to be over, and Amina and Joseph made plans to get married in Las Vegas. They were ready to move on with their lives, move on from Yaser, and be happy. But of course, Yaser couldn't allow that. Mere hours after the girls initially left to go into hiding, Yaser called the police to report them missing. Tissy called the police herself as soon as she heard, informing them they only wanted to escape, that they were fearing for their lives, and so the police backed off. Good, but Yaser didn't, and Tissy was about to prove that she wasn't strong enough to escape him. The girls had been safe only for a few days, and it was then that everything started to crumble. On December the 31st, 2007, Tissy told the girls that they had to drive to East Texas since it was their grandmother's birthday, and they had to go put flowers on her grave. This was, of course, a lie, and she soon admitted as much. Tissy, in her weakness, had given up and decided, "Oh no! Oh god damn! She was going back to Yaser." If it sounds like I'm dunking on Tissy at this point, it's because I am. For much of this story, I've given her leeway. I've treated her as a victim of Yaser, and I know she is, even now. But the fact that she simply wasn't strong enough to stand up for herself or her children, she was weak, and in the end it cost her everything. She promised that Yaser would change, that he said things were okay, and all was forgiven, and asked the girls to come home with her. Sarah agreed, but Amina was having none of it. She reached out to her Aunt Connie on New Year's Day, 2008, to take her back to Joseph's. According to Connie, Amina sounded frantic, so she picked her up right away and drove her back to her boyfriend's house, telling her to get a restraining order against her dad. Tissy called repeatedly, begging for Amina to come home, that everything would be okay. In the end, she went to Joseph's home around 5 p.m., stood in the driveway, and refused to leave without her daughter. In response to Joseph's hesitation in letting Amina go back home, citing Yaser's abusive behavior all her life, Tissy was quick to counter, promising to protect her girls, saying, "I thought about it. Y'all in Islam are going to get married, and I don't want to be all alone. Nothing is going to happen to Amina with me there. I really want them to finish high school. Then you can run away." Amina was adamant about staying with Joseph, begging to go back with him to Tulsa, but Joseph was sadly swayed, believing it wouldn't hurt to hear what Yaser had to say and that Amina would be safe as long as her mother was there with her. Oh no, dude, she's not though, dude. Quoting, Amina was crying and didn't want to go, but her mother made her. I trusted her mum to take care of her. Amina was heartbroken. She knew there was no reason with her dad. As she was forced to leave the house, Tissy dragging her by the hand, she spoke to Joseph for the last time. "You're letting me down. It's over. He won't let me see you again." If only she knew how right she truly was. Later that same night, she and her sister would be no more. FBI's Most Wanted. Later that night, after Amina was dragged home by her mother, Yaser made a suggestion. He said he wanted a clean slate, to make things right from that moment forward, so he gave them kisses and suggested he take his girls out in the taxi to go get some food and talk things over. Not the worst suggestion in the world. It sounds almost wholesome, if not for the fact that we know precisely how this story ends. Tissy even asked if she would go with them. Yaser said no, that he wanted to hash things out with the girls alone, and Tissy obediently listened. I'd like to think that she regrets that decision, and every decision leading up to that moment to this day. At 7:35 p.m., a 911 call came to the Irving Police Department. On the other end, the heartbreaking final moments of a bright young lady who did nothing wrong besides wanting to be happy. "Help! My dad shot me. It was Yaser Said, and she only had mere moments left. I'm dying. I'm dying." The sound of a car door opening could be heard. "Oh my god, not again. Stop it. Stop it. Stop." All the dispatcher could hear from then was the sound of a struggle, the slamming of a car door, and then the final gasps and desperate whimpers of a scared and pained young girl before the line went dead. Yaser Abdul Said, in all his anger and blind hatred, had taken his daughters, his two youngest children, in his taxi, out for a drive. Amina sat in the front next to her father, and Sarah was seated in the back. Yaser made his way to Irving, Texas, specifically to a park on Riverside Drive, where he parked the car. Then, without warning, Yaser drew his 9mm pistol and opened fire. He shot Amina twice, hitting her point blank in the chest and severing her spinal cord, killing her instantly. Sarah was next. She tried to fight off her dad when he turned back to her, but he unloaded on her with 9 shots to the abdomen. It was afterwards that Sarah managed to call the authorities, but it was far too late by then. By tracing the phone, the police were able to identify the phone's owner as Islam Said, who had loaned it to Sarah for the time being. Officers went to the Said residence to pick up Islam and Tissy, since they wanted to ask them about what was going on. The two of them explained that Yaser had taken the girls out for food, but they were running late. Soon, though, another call came into the police, this one from the Omni Mandalay Hotel in Las Colinas, Texas. It was 8:30 p.m., and a cab driver had pulled in behind another parked taxi. When the taxi didn't move for a period of time, the driver took a look inside and saw the bloody and discarded bodies of Amina and Yaser Said inside. Yaser Said was long gone. After killing his daughters, Yaser had taken what he had on him, including his Egyptian passport, and vanished into thin air. For a long time it was believed that he had fled back to Egypt to escape his evil deeds, but there were no records of his passport being used or him getting on and off a plane. Soon after their bodies had been discovered, both Amina and Sarah were given 2 separate funeral services, one Christian, one Muslim, with Yaser Said voicing his insistence and anger that the boyfriends of both girls should be barred from the proceedings, acting as if they were dead, simply because of their love and association with the boys. If that isn't outrageous and delusional, I don't know what is. The search for Yaser was on, and the authorities never stopped their pursuit, even as the years dragged on. Years? Bruh, go out and catch him already. That's not... Get him! Catch him! It's double murder! Sarah and Amina's family, especially their aunts, did everything in their power to keep the search for Yaser in the public consciousness, telling anyone who would listen to keep their eyes peeled and their ears open for any sign of the murderer's father. They even offered up a reward, which would total up to $21,125. And what did Tissy do to help in the efforts? Diddly squat. Aside from filing for divorce in the year 2009, this woman did next to nothing in regard to the case. Hell, a mere 2 days after the murders of her beloved youngest children at the hands of her husband, she and Islam returned to the house at Lakeland Drive. By that time, it had already been torn apart by the SWAT team in search of Yaser, and Tissy simply said that everything inside, including all of her daughter's possessions and the house itself, belonged to Islam now, as was his right. And when it came to the press, the woman never said a word, all except to repeat one phrase over and over again: Yaser is a good man. You are just absolutely delusional. You're just completely just off it. Yes, sure, Tissy, and I'm DJ Khaled. From the word jump, the news circulated the story that Amina and Sarah were killed by their father in what could be seen as an honor killing, a belief that is still held and accepted by the world at large to this day. Amina and Sarah were scoffing at their Muslim heritage and refused to obey their father, refused to do with their lives as he wished, and so they had to die. Yaser's brother, also known by the alias of Ahmed for his own protection, says otherwise, though, condemning his brother's action, saying that it had nothing to do with honor. Only a monster could do that. That is a tribal, backward thing. They were stars, special. They were going to be doctors. Wajiha al-Huwaida is a female Saudi writer and activist, and she also dismisses them as honor killings. Honor killings have nothing to do with Islam. It's only tradition. It's the mentality of women as property. For years and years, the search continued for Yaser Said, with various reports of sightings of him coming from places such as New York City and Newark, New Jersey, none of which panned out. It got to the point where, as the title of this chapter suggests, Yaser Said was put on the FBI's 10 most wanted fugitive list since December of 2014, with a reward of $100,000 for any information leading to his arrest. And so, Yaser was simply a ghost in the wind. Until August the 14th, 2017, that is. On that day, a call came in from a maintenance worker at an apartment complex in Bedford, Texas, and he had seen quite the sight. He'd gone to fix a water leak and used a key to unlock the door, only to find the deadbolt holding it closed. After knocking and announcing his presence, a tall, middle-aged Muslim man, matching Yaser's description, let the worker inside to fix the leak, after which the worker alerted the police. Who was renting the apartment? I hear you ask. Why? It was Yaser Said, of course. The worker was shown a picture of Yaser Said and said that it was definitely him. There could be no doubt. When an agent went to interview Islam about it, he was hostile and uncooperative, but he also let something slip. As he was re-entering his apartment, he was heard calling out to someone inside, "We have a problem," which is not suspicious at all. Dude, what are you doing? Hello. Use the brain. Well, the police certainly thought it was, and at 1 a.m. that same day, a search warrant was executed on Islam's apartment. At that point, it was of course empty, but the sliding glass door leading to the patio was conveniently left open. After examining the area, it was clear that whoever had been inside the apartment had leapt from the patio, landing in and crushing a bush. The authorities didn't leave empty-handed, though. The fool had left some evidence behind, namely a pair of eyeglasses, several cigarette butts, and a toothbrush. Everything was bagged up and mailed over to Quantico, Virginia for DNA testing. They ran it against DNA taken from Amina and Yaser Said, and they got a match. It belonged to their father, Yaser. Unfortunately, the boss was in the wind once more. Fortunately, it wouldn't be for very long. It was in August 2020, right in the middle of the global zombie apocalypse, that everything came crashing down for Yaser Said. He had been spotted alongside Islam entering a house in Justin, Texas, and that he had purchased in the name of Dalal Said. Now, who is Dalal Said? Well, she just so happened to be Yaser's niece, the daughter of his older brother, Yasin Abdul Fattah Said. Another man was seen helping them unload groceries, and he was identified as Yaser Said. The FBI placed the home under 24-hour surveillance, and on the 17th, and 2 days later, on August the 19th, 2020, they observed the shadow of a person inside while Yasin and Islam were away. It's literally been years. Years and years and years. Why haven't you fled the country? You're on the FBI's 10 most wanted list. Just work a way out. Get back to Egypt or something, my dude. Like, what are you doing hanging around? Go to Lebanon. Go to Mexico. I don't know if Egypt probably doesn't have extradition. Go to Egypt, go back home, come on! You gotta leave, what are you doing? Then, on August the 25th, the FBI watched as Islam and Yasin exited the home with 2 trash bags in hand. After following the pair to a shopping center in Southlake, Texas, approximately 19 miles from the house, they observed as Islam got out of the car and Yasin pulled over to the side of the mall before exiting the parking lot altogether. While searching the trash cans, they found the bags which contained used cigarette butts, and a search warrant was executed on August the 26th, 2020. Why are they driving 19 miles away? Is it just to hide, evidence just in case? Being super careful? It doesn't seem like they were super careful generally. So why the super carefulness with the trash? Yaser Said was inside the house and was arrested on charges of capital murder in relation to the deaths of Amina and Yaser Said. Yasin and Islam were arrested at a separate location in Euless, Texas soon after. Finally, there was some justice to be found for both Amina and Sarah. After the arrest of her ex-husband, a tearful Tissy told the media, "Now the girls can rest in peace." And no, I'm not letting her off the hook there. Victim or not, she did nothing to help track down her husband and only defended him while he was on the run. And now she wants to act sad about it? I don't think so. I mean, I am also giving her a little bit of credit, because maybe she's still afraid. She could still be absolutely afraid of him. He is in the wind. And if she starts saying shit, he could come back and kill her. But now he's in custody. She can be more honest. I don't know. I've obviously not done as much research as Matt has because he wrote this and I just read it, but I do feel like she is very battered. The trials of Islam and Yaser Said came first. On January the 19th, 2021, Islam pled guilty to harboring a fugitive, conspiring to harbor a fugitive, and 1 count of conspiracy to obstruct justice, and was sentenced to 10 years in prison for his crimes. As of today, serving his sentence at a federal correction institute, Big Spring. Yaser tried to backpedal on his actions, saying he hated his brother and would never have helped him if he believed what he did. But it didn't help his case, as on February the 4th, 2021, he was found guilty of conspiracy and harboring a fugitive. On June the 4th, 2021, he was sentenced to 12 years in prison, and is currently serving his sentence at federal correction institution Bastrop. Good. But what of Yaser? Needle in the arm, let's go! Well, upon his arrest, he was transported and held at Dallas County Jail, North Tower, and his trial would commence on August the 2nd, 2022. The defense tried to say that Yaser never would hurt his girls, that he hadn't killed them. So, who did he claim did? Well, an unknown shadowy assassin, of course. Yaser claimed that while driving his girls to get dinner, he had spotted a dark figure stalking the taxi. Fearing for his life and thinking he was about to be the target of murder, he fled the cab, leaving his 2 teenage daughters to fend for themselves. Yes, it's as stupid as it sounds. As why he never came forward after the fact, he simply believed he wouldn't receive a fair trial, and that everything around the case, from the media to the prosecution, had been skewed against him, his culture, and his religion. I mean, dude, you've only got to get reasonable doubt. It's this is not reasonable doubt, my dude. You're going away forever. To quote the closing argument of Yaser's defense attorney, Braharan Muse, everybody has a preference in how they discipline their kids, just like they have a preference for what kind of food they eat, what kind of people they date, what religion they want to practice. Discipline does not mean you murdered your children. Your culture does not mean you murdered your children. No, but Yaser did. I think we can all smell the bull from here, and so did the prosecution. To quote prosecutor Lauren Black, who seemingly could read Yaser like a book, he controlled what they did, who they talked to, and who they could be friends with, if they and who they could date, and he controlled everything in his household. And to echo a closing statement about the nonsense the defense was spewing, quoting again, "If you inherently or knowingly cause the death of another in Dallas County, we are coming for you. Period. You will be prosecuted. Period. It has nothing to do with your race or religion." The trial lasted all of 6 days, and it only took the jury 3 hours to come to a conclusion. Yaser Abdul Said was guilty of the capital murder of Amina and Yaser Said. For his crimes, he was sentenced to life in prison without parole. No, the prosecution didn't seek the death penalty for some reason, so not as yeehaw as I would have liked, but I'll take it. Yeah, I'll also come on, get a little more yee. It's Texas, baby. Come on. Yeehaw. Currently, Yaser is 67 years old and being housed at the Texas Department of Criminal Justice McConaughey Unit in B County, Texas, where he will spend the remainder of his pathetic and miserable life, all because his girls wanted to be happy. Kim, yeah, can agreed, Matt. That hypocritical bag. Wrap up. And there we have it, dear audience. We've reached the ends of both of our tales today. Full disclosure, this is probably one of the saddest scripts I've ever written, and I know it will stick with me for quite some time. These cases have been on my personal to-do list to cover for a long time, and for good reason, but that doesn't make them any easier to write about. Tina Yaser, Amina Said, Yaser Said, these 3 young ladies did absolutely nothing wrong. They only wanted to live their lives the way they wished, be happy with the men in their lives, and just be normal, everyday American teenagers. And unfortunately, to their parents, that was the worst thing they could possibly be. Zaina Maria Yaser couldn't accept their daughter was the product of her environment, that she was happy, and that they couldn't control her. Everything she did was wrong in their eyes, no matter how small, normal, or mundane. Her music, they hated it. Her clothes, they hated them. Her friends, they hated them. Her job, hated it. Boyfriends, well, they really hated him. And in the end, her life meant less to them than their culture, their religion, and their so-called honor. Yaser Said, well, where do I even start? A petty, controlling, manipulative, vindictive, greedy, vile, reprehensible human being. He cared about nobody beside himself, and in the end, he destroyed his own family. He destroyed any free will or sense of independence in his wife, corrupted his son, and turned him into a convict, and worst of all, gunned down his own daughters simply because they wouldn't kowtow to his wants. He dominated them, tried to control them, sexually assaulted them, and then tried to marry Amina off like she was something to be sold. In the end, he stole their lives away, just because they wanted to be their own people, away from him, and away from his paranoid and controlling behavior. So I suppose the lasting question is this: do I count the murders of Amina and Yaser Said as honor killings? Admittedly, I see where the doubt has come from. So many other cultures have had honor killings, which is true, and on the surface this seems to be a couple of murders based on greed and building frustration. But I do believe these count as honor killings, as at the core of it all it has all the signs. Amina and Sarah wanted nothing to do with their father's attitude or his religion. They refused to conform, preferring their American lifestyle. They fought against his control, and they refused to marry who he wanted them to marry, choosing American boyfriends instead. But no matter how you look at it, I think we can all agree that Zaina Maria Yaser can rot in hell for what they did, and that Yaser Said deserves to wallow in his lonely, tiny cell until nature runs its course. And with that, I'd like to wrap up with a poem that Amina wrote in her diary, showing just how she felt while under her father's thumb, wanting nothing more than to escape and be free, something that sadly, he never allowed her to do. My heart is an open wound. I can only cry. Don't try to understand. Make me a bird. Let me fly. I hate you. I hate your land. You've frozen my heart. Let me die. Make me an angel. Let me fly. Endless tyranny round and round. Let me go. Where can I be found? My pain you will never know. Make me a leaf. Let me fly. Let me blow. You hang on. You think you want me. You don't want to know. You don't know me. And here, I don't want to be. Dismembered appendices. With all that said and done, I want to take the time to give a special and loving shout out to fellow writer and dear friend Emma. First of all, we know how awesome of a writer she is. She writes for this channel regularly, but she has also been helping me edit my scripts, going all the way back to the piece on Panzram. That was a while ago, my dude. And with that said, she has also made numerous contributions to this script in particular, namely when it came to the Muslim religion, which she is surprisingly quite knowledgeable about. So thanks again, Emma. I honestly couldn't do this without you. Brilliant. And thank you, Matt, for putting this together. Appreciate it. And on that, it's a grim episode, wasn't it? Thanks for being here.